Hey everybody, Josh Loftus here. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up that we recorded this episode live, meaning that we were actually in the same room together and we had a little bit of mic trouble. You're going to hear some audio peaking, some distortion. I know it happened. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do about it. I just didn't figure out how to make the mic work the way that I wanted. So sorry about that. Please don't send me a bunch of emails and tweets saying that my audio sucks. I know it does. I'm sorry. I apologize. Won't happen again. Please forgive me. And on with the show. Hey everyone, I'm Josh Loftus, and this is the Everyday Monday podcast, the podcast where we talk about everyday people doing everyday things in everyday churches. Whether you're a pastor, a plumber, or the creator of the electric pour-over coffee maker, they just wanted to be hipster, but they were just a little too lazy. This podcast is for you. This is where we find value in the trenches of Christian life. Welcome to Everyday Monday. And in the studio with me live, and I mean live, we are literally sitting right across from each other, is a very special guest. He's the director of the Damascus House in Bothell, Washington. He's a husband and a father of the three cutest kids you will ever see in your life. My friend, Mr. Kevin Hurley. Kevin, how you doing today, man?
Oh, absolutely amazing. Thanks, Josh. Yeah. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. So, Kevin, before we get going here, man, give us a short bio of who you are and what you do for a living.
Okay. I am the director of the Damascus House, like you just said, and I have the privilege of helping lost and hurting men fight their addiction through the power of Christ. So I'm very blessed in that way. Yeah. It's an amazing opportunity to serve God in that capacity. So, yeah, like you said, I'm married. It's going on 5 years now. Just had our 5-year anniversary. Get 3 beautiful children, and yeah, man, life's amazing right now. It is compared to how it was. I came to Lord about 7 years ago when I was 36 years old. Hopeless drug addict, wow. Started, I was in the Navy, grew up, normal family, mom, dad, loved me. And, actually, they grew up Catholic, but never really kind of served.
Okay. Right. So they were bad Catholics.
Right? Bad Catholics. Yeah. My dad was an altar boy, did all that thing. And, in fact, even when I was going into the Navy, I'm signing the papers. I was 17 years old when I signed, my papers to go into the Navy. And my dad was right there. And they asked, about my dog tags. What religion do you want on your dog tags? And I'm like, I don't even know. My dad's, without even question, he's like, oh, he's Roman Catholic. I'm like, I guess I'm Roman Catholic.
I guess that's what we're
going
to go with.
So RC was on my dog tags. And really didn't know what that meant. So, so that's how I grew up. But real quick after the Navy, I had the best time in my life, 18 to 22 years old, and got out of the Navy and just kind of drifted back into my old friends that were still doing the same thing. And instead of smoking weed, they were doing harder stuff, and I kind of trickled into that. And next thing I know, it just snowballed, and 15-year life just ruled by drugs and alcohol. But by the grace of God, I had an aunt that was devoted to prayer for me and all our family members, and was actually, visited a church in Port Orchard, Christ the Rock, where they had the mission house, and she just wrote down the director's name. They went to this church function, and they had an awareness night, and really just wrote down Lyle Skillman's name, and she had talked to him, and he even said he has to be ready. This can't be for you. This can't be for family members. He has to come to that point, and really 9 months later, I was in a really bad place. Probably the worst place my addiction had taken me. I was on I guess a 4-day crack binge, and living at home. I had nowhere else to go, and in and out of rehabs, nothing was working. I go right back to it, and I just kept repeating this prayer, and I remember, repeating this prayer over and over again, just tears in my eyes, and I said, God, I cannot do this anymore. If you're real, I need you. This is where I had a supernatural experience where I just felt this warmth wash over me. And I'm like, even in I can remember like it was yesterday. I'm like, what is going on with me right now? And I just raised up, got off my knees, and opened the door. And it was like this force pushing me downstairs. And I just went to my mom and I said, I'm an addict. I need help. I don't know what to do. I need help. Yeah. And of course, my mom's burst into tears. She pulls out this name. It was Lyle Skillman, and she was, you need to call this guy. And the rest is history. I went to the program. 6 months. It was a discipleship program. Okay. And fell in love with Jesus. And I just remember my prayer, like, Lord, I don't know what my next steps are, because I was doing construction, odd jobs. Sure. I became the house manager, became real good friends with Lyle, and then eventually, went out into the workforce for about a year and a half, climbing cell phone towers and just kind of figure life out. And, there's an opportunity about a year and a half later to be an intern under that director, and the stars aligned. God provided a way, and we opened up here in Bothell with under Canyon Hills, which that church just supports us like nobody's business. And and the whole process, met my wife 6 years ago now, and 3 kids later, and ministry, and it's wonderful. I couldn't ask for a better outcome of, from where I was, a hopeless drug addict, to saved by grace. And it's just amazing,
It's such a testimony, obviously, to the grace and the transformation of the gospel. There's nothing more exciting than to see lives, and you're in it right now. I grew up in it, seeing the lives turn the 180. Yeah. Right. And the only thing that can do that is the gospel. Right. Absolutely. So 6 years later, three kids later, you're the director of the Damascus House. It's a residential counseling facility. Just real quick before we go into kind of the main topics of the podcast, just give us just a really quick synopsis of your approach and philosophy of counseling. So biblical counseling is what you guys do, or give us just kind of how is that different from the, I guess, quote unquote, like regular or psychological counseling that some will get if they go to like a treatment center.
Sure. I can speak to this because I've been to secular programs, drug counseling. Part of my testimony going into this program at 36 years old, I'm 43 now. 7 years ago, I had never opened a Bible. I didn't know who King David was. I didn't know any of the Bible stories, just from, normal stuff you hear, but I certainly didn't know anything. And once, we would open up the Bible every morning, and, my prayer was, Lord, just help me understand. I don't, because some of the guys grew up in the church, and, the guys I was in the program with, and, I found it a struggle at first, but then once I realized, God's got me here, and he's drawing me into himself. I started studying the Bible, and, even, I've done the NA, the AA for years before this, and then in and out patient programs, medical facilities. And what I learned there is that there was no hope. There was no hope. Like, you're always an addict. You're an addict. You will always be an addict. Yeah. And that was very, once I came to the mission house, it was very contradictory to what they teach. Right. And one of the verses that really captured my heart and gave me hope was 1 Corinthians 6, that 9 through 11, where it goes through, all the sins and what you're, people of the world label you as, whether it's a drunkard, a homosexual, this, that.
And such were.
There, yeah.
Were some of you.
Such were
Past
some.
tense.
But you were washed, you were justified, you were sanctified by the Spirit of our Lord and our God. So
exactly. Amen.
That, I'm like, well, that breaks the hi, I'm Kevin, I'm an addict.
Right.
You know, like, no. Hi, Kevin. You know, so I found great hope. And, you know, if you're trying to beat drugs and alcohol alone, and those programs, you know, they can be helpful, but they don't have any gospel truth in them. And there's no hope. In fact, I think we just researched it. In a 5-year span, there's less than 2% success rate. And I'm not, you know, we don't go by numbers here because one thing I'll say is, well, we're 100% successful because we preach the word of God and we're spreading seed. We're doing what God has called us to do. Right. So, you know, basically, you know, we all have a sinful heart, and it's just coming to that realization that our hearts are sick and desperately in need of Jesus, and that's what we just try to point guys to.
Yeah. Well, and it really does come down to also how deep do you believe the gospel goes, right? How effective do you believe the blood of Christ actually is? If somebody has an addiction, or they're struggling with depression, struggling with anger, pornography, something like that, that is at the core a heart issue, and we believe, and I think any Christian would agree that the only thing that can change the heart is the gospel, right? But that biblical counseling applies that. It's like, no, the gospel is truly the only thing. If you want true and lasting change instead of just behavior modification, because, I mean, what good is it to just make somebody behave different if when they die, they go to hell, right? And what biblical counseling does is it gets to the root, like you said, of the heart is deceitful. It needs a change. There needs to be a heart transplant there. And the only thing that does that is the gospel, right? Which is why biblical counseling has as its focus the word of God, the gospel. This is the only thing that's going to bring change.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
We're nerding out on biblical counseling here. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it.
That's all I know, really.
Shifting gears a little bit into serving in church, right? You're active in serving in church. You go to Canyon Hills,
yes,
in Bothell, Washington, right? We had Ben Marshall on the podcast a while ago, one of the pastors there. When you think about Canyon Hills, what is one aspect of Canyon Hills that you really, really value, you really, really appreciate?
Oh man, where do I start? They just have a heart for hurting people. They have a heart for, first of all, their mission is to make more and better disciples. So to train people up, and being in a larger church, there's many opportunities to serve. So there's so many places, whether it's you know, making coffee, ushering, working on the fit team, you know, in the parking lots, directing traffic, but their heart behind missions is huge. Sending people out to all the nations, you know, the heart behind what we're called to do, you know. And if you're not able to go on, you know, trips, I'm going to India later in November, and really looking forward to it. But they have teams that pray for the teams that, you know, so there's always something to do, and they're always encouraging people. And my wife and I, we took a little break, but we're getting back into working at the nursery, just because, you know, we have small children, and every little bit helps.
Gotta pay your dues, right?
Yeah, man. And
that's right.
You know, man, if you're not tested by being in a room with about 20 little 2-year-olds, you know, that's where, you know, that's
how
where,
sanctified am I?
Yeah, but no, it's so awesome, man. So many cool things to do there.
No, that's
and
awesome.
Really, that church is just so awesome and encouraging to help encourage you to serve.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, exactly. And when you obviously coming to Christ, you know, somewhat relatively recently, when you think about your life before Christ and your life after Christ, how has your view of work and service both in the regular workforce and also in church. How has that changed? How has your view of what work and service and giving of your time, how has that changed from when you were without Christ to now?
Yeah, definitely. I did the minimal before Christ. I just trying to survive, and I actually thought I was a decent guy before. Hey, I'm a good guy with just really, really bad habits.
Yeah, that's right.
And after coming to Christ and realizing He's the only good, the only good He gives us is what He is, what's in Him. But the way I've responded to that is, you give without getting tired. You never getting tired of doing good, and you're never done with a ministry, whether it's your home, serving your wife and your kids. That's your first priority, under Christ.
Right. Right.
It's exhausting. We're messy people, but to get in the trenches, and it is, I deal with a lot of crying moms, crying family members. As long as you're just giving God the glory and relying on His strength, I think that's a good balance. And just, really setting your mind on the things above, not on the temporal.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And what would you say to the person that comes up to you and says, Kevin, I am tired. I am very weary. And I don't know if the service that I'm doing here in church is worthwhile. I don't see the value in it. How would you go about, counseling or and encouraging that person that perhaps is in that specific trench?
I would probably direct him to the book of Job. Just kidding. No, we're in, it is. It's tiring. I was talking to a guy last night that asked me that same question. He's like, man, I just feel that my efforts aren't going anywhere. And I'm like, whoa, as long as you're representing the gospel and you're an ambassador for Christ, it doesn't come back void. You may not see it in your lifetime, but when we cross heaven, you might see that family waiting for you, or vice versa.
Yeah, and I really like what you said about you might not see it in your lifetime. You might not see how your service and how your faithfulness in serving those around you, you might not see the effects of that, but you need to know and remember that none of that is returning void. That if you are doing it for the sake of the gospel, and the gospel is central in your life, and you are being faithful to show Christ to your church, to those around you, to the people that you work with, to your family, that in and of itself is exactly what we should be doing. Right. And that's the mentality that we should be having.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're just a couple of beggars showing other beggars where to find
bread.
Right. Yeah. And I love that. I think I've said that before. I love that phrase. And when you think about other beggars that you have worked with, other Christians, either that you have read, listened to, or that are in your life right now, when you think about those Christians that inspire you to follow Christ more fervently than you do now, and we all have those individuals that we look at and we're like, man, who are those people, and what are the traits that they possess that you see in them that cause that desire in you? Yeah,
no, that's a great question. What I admire about mentors of mine, guys who've been walking a lot longer than I have, is just this peace and quietness about them. And because I'm an emotional guy. This is an emotional ministry, and I tend to fly off the handle with my guys, just because it's just so emotional and the ups and downs, and I just see guys, and I question why am I reacting like this, and men that I see that I really respect, and they can handle hard situations without losing their cool, being very have a soft temper. But yet really being able to process the situation before reacting. And I'm a reaction guy, and sometimes my old mentor would say, that's why we have 2 ears and one mouth. We have to listen.
We listen twice as much as we talk. Right?
Yeah, truly. What, and I heard this, I think Oliver told me this. There are guys who have something to say.
Yeah.
And there's guys that just have to say something, So I fall.
That is awesome.
So
that's awesome.
Choosing your words.
I have no clue where I fall on that. That's bad.
Choosing your words wisely.
Yeah. No, exactly. So shifting gears a little bit. Obviously, in this type of ministry, as we both know, you accumulate some interesting stories. Some interesting things happen. Not all, most of which we can't talk about for sure. But without obviously divulging anything, pertinent or important or vital, share with us one of the most unforgettable experiences, one of the funniest or most just unforgettable moments that you have had serving here.
I like you said, I have several.
Yeah, I figured.
There's, if I could share two.
Go for it.
One, when I was the associate director at the mission house, we had a gentleman. I don't know, backed the truck into the garage, and this garage was this metal corrugated, so it dented in.
Yeah,
and. So we had all these guys trying to, fix this, push out the wall to, make it nice. Well, one of the other guys went inside to try, and this is metal overlapping metal on the side of this garage. And one of the guy's pinkies were sticking out. And the other guy just trying to took a sledgehammer and hit the wall, sheared the tip of his pinky off. And it was this, yeah.
Just the guy's bloodbath after that.
Yeah, screaming in pain. And his pinky's on the ground. And, it was too late. By the time we got to the hospital, it was too late to kind of repair the pinky. But the guy wanted to to have the pinky. This guy's a little, little crazy.
Okay. All right.
But he wrapped up the pinky and kept it in the freezer. Nobody knew he had done this. And, he told a couple people about it. And then
his pinky is just in the freezer.
In the freezer. He just wanted to keep his pinky.
Man,
and I think he had a name for it. But then, once the director got hold of it, he's all, what is, they were cleaning out the fridge. Yeah. What is this? Oh, that's this guy's pinky. And get that out of here, throw it out of there. And once the guy found out, he was irate. You threw away my pinky, and it was
my pinky.
It was my pinky, and it's not yours. You had no business throwing my pinky away.
It's mine.
And this had been there several months. And by the time, there was some. He eventually, his heart was so hardened by this whole event that he tried to sue the ministry. It all got taken care of. By the way, if anyone wants to start a ministry, make sure you have a good lawyer that writes a hold harmless clause that will save you from events.
Save like you this. From getting sued for loss of pinky.
But and that's just. We've had so many crazy stories. Not so much losing a pinky, but just with putting off old life and coming into, all right, how do I live for Jesus? But there is, the second story is more, my situation.
Okay, all right.
Going to it was a pastor meeting, a staff pastor and director meeting, and I came a little bit late. And mind you, I used to be this construction worker, drug addict, and now, hey, I'm in meetings with pastors, devoting their lives to studying God's word, and just so I get to the meeting a little late, and one of the things we were, kind of talking about is, growing the church and how to facilitate, because our church has been growing year after year, and how do we facilitate it? So they were talking about, they had sent a crew down to a church in Arizona that I know very well. That it's this big church. I won't say the name.
Yeah.
But they were describing going to this church just to see how they operated, just to get notes. And I knew exactly what church they were going to. And I, in my addiction, before I knew Christ, I would go to this church and say, hey, you need Christ, go to this. And I'm like, I would go to this church, and huge church, and I would go week after week after week trying to, hear the gospel or what's, how is this going to help me? And time after time, they would, their main focus was tithing. And, I just like, and, hey, I'm a tithe at your church. I'm not saying
yes, yep.
But
it is biblical and a good thing to do.
It is.
Yeah.
But
it can be overdone in a sermon series.
What did it for me is they had this video and,
they brought video out for it.
Video. No,
right.
My last time at this church and, they were showing a family that was on welfare and barely could make ends meet, and how they had tithed their welfare check, and I'm like,
whoa,
and I'm like, here I am, this,
Okay, this just puts this church in a brand new category in my head now.
And
okay.
they had this thermometer on the stage, like, look, if we hit this, we need to reach this goal. And just to describe that, I mean, this place had waterfalls, a diner. It looked like a college campus going on. It was beautiful. They had bouncy houses all over.
Oh wow!
Watered down gospel and it was like week after week. I'm just this hurting guy looking for Jesus. And anyway, so they're definitely describing this church.
Okay.
And my heart stirred up, and I don't know if it at the time looking back, it's like, Kevin, don't open your mouth, but at the time
you had something to say.
I had something to say. So I'm like, please, don't get your example from the way they run. I'm like, I kind of described how I'd go to this week after week, and they just wanted your money. That's what my impression was, and I could be wrong. I'm just where I was at that time in my life. And I'm like, 19 out of the 20 times I went, they talked about tithing. And then all the pastors erupted in laughter. And I'm like, oh, what did I say? And then Pastor Steve goes, Kevin, you came in a little late. My next sermon series was going to be on tithing. And everyone just laughed. No. And I just felt like I was beat red. And I'm like, I learned right now then that maybe I shouldn't say everything that comes to mind.
So, hey, Kevin, we have come to the end of our podcast here, man. We have talked about tons of different stuff, mostly biblical counseling, but that's okay because that's what we love. It is time now for the Monday Hot Takes. And this is where I ask you a bunch of random questions, and you give me the first thing that pops into your head.
All right.
You ready for these?
Oh, are you ready? I don't know. I'm scared.
I'm.
Okay.
We'll see.
You can edit, right?
Oh yeah. No, I can edit whatever, but
I'm just kidding.
Depending on how good it is, I don't know. Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right, Kevin. Favorite movie?
I have so many. Favorite movie? There's definitely a top 5, but I would say.
All right, give us one of your top 5.
I love The Wizard of Oz. It's a classic.
Really?
Yes.
I would not have pegged you for that.
All right.
That's
this
amazing.
is a guilty pleasure. Grease. The first, yeah. My mom, they used to, because
this tatted up construction worker watching Grease.
Yeah. Well, I was a kid when it came out. My dad smoked for a lot.
Okay.
They would roll up his Marlboros in my T-shirt, and my mom would do my hair with the little, John Travolta thing.
Oh my goodness! There's got to be a picture of this running around.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
But I would know all the songs, and I would dance, and
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right. Honest question: do you ever sing any Grease songs to Stephanie, your wife?
I sing, but
do you ever give your hair a little curl for her?
Oh yeah.
Hey Stephanie.
Well, that and Elvis. I'm a big Elvis fan, and God has not blessed me with an angelic voice, but that has not stopped me. But Summer Nights, I'm not going to break into song. I would sing that. Wella, all
that. Man. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
All right. Favorite theologian?
Well, I'm a huge MacArthur fan.
All right, look at you, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, Johnny Mac. Right. I had never heard preaching like that. I listened.
He's very gifted.
podcast, and of course R.C. Sproul.
Yeah.
We do a study here, the holiness of God, and really
fantastic.
Understanding the character of God. Once you start understanding who God is, it's easier to surrender to who He is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyone that's listening, R.C. Sproul's The Holiness of God, can't recommend it high enough. That's fantastic. Yeah. Favorite food?
Ooh, man, I grew up, Italian family, Italian Irish family. Anything with spaghetti or a meat sauce.
Yeah, a lot of meat sauce.
Lasagna, but mom's home cooking. My wife's a great cook too. Meatloaf, she makes killer meatloaf.
All right. All right. Least favorite food?
Least favorite food. There's not a whole lot I don't like, man.
Really?
I'm pretty easy.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess just ultra spicy food. Like, I like spicy food, but if it's to the point where you need to wear rubber gloves. I've been at these eating contests with my friends that they give you rubber gloves to have these.
Don't touch your face.
But if you can't even touch it, why should it be going in your body?
That is a fair question. Yeah. We should be asking
really
those questions
too spicy
more.
of food. I don't really like that.
All right. Favorite vacation place?
Vacation, man. I would have to say Hawaii. We had a friend that a couple of years ago that lived there, and I just loved the ocean. That's why I went in the Navy. I just loved being on the water, and it's just such a tropical place. I couldn't live there though, because kind
of too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
But, it's like too much ice cream.
Yeah. Ice cream's that should be on the top of my favorite food. But man. And when I was in the Navy, I got a chance to go to Australia, and
cool.
That was a really cool experience. So.
Very cool. Nuts and cookies, yes or no?
Yeah.
Oh, Kevin.
Oh, no?
Oh, no.
Oh, man, I like
Kevin.
a little walnut. Walnut raisin. Oh, man.
Raisins?
Yeah.
Kevin.
Oh, are we?
No.
Are we?
Oh, we are disunified here, man. That is
hills
bad.
to die on.
Oh
okay.
My goodness. Yeah. Nuts is like, okay, that's a no.
Well,
raisins. I've said this before. Raisins and cookies are the reason I have trust issues. It's because they look like chocolate chips. I'm pretty sure that's on a shirt somewhere. I've stolen that.
That's funny.
Oh man. What's the best Christmas present you've ever gotten?
Best Christmas present. My wife, that was a birthday present, but she got me an ESV Bible that I really
We'll
loved.
count it.
Yeah, we'll count it. Yeah. My wife's very thoughtful in her gifts.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah, I appreciated that.
That's awesome. What's your go-to karaoke song?
Oh,
something from Greece.
Suspicious Minds. I didn't even have to think about that one.
Suspicious Minds.
It's one of the only songs I think I know all the words to, and oh man, I did this one where I think this was before Christ, so I might have had a couple drinks in me, but it gave me the courage. Okay. And I did the whole windmill.
Oh man!
I think the waitress brought a towel and wiped my forehead off after.
Wow.
I had a lot of crowd participation, and
Yeah.
But yeah,
you're a crowd favorite, man. That's what you got to do, right? You got to hype the crowd up. Yeah. Let's see. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
All right. Well, we agree on that one. What is the best advice you've ever been given?
I think it was back to that, listen first.
2 ears, one mouth.
2 ears, one mouth. Definitely.
Yeah.
Still working on it.
All right. And Kevin, when you get into heaven, other than Christ, of course, who is the first person that you are running to go see and meet?
Ooh.
Or see again?
Man, I think I'm just excited to see who's going to be there. You always hear, people you don't think are going to be there, and people you thought were going to be there aren't going to be there. But I would have to say, there's so many Bible, people in the Bible that I would like to talk to, but I would have to say George Mueller was very...
Oh, yeah. Yep. The orphanage.
Yeah, and just, talking to him about that faith, man.
Well, hey, Kevin, we have come to the end, man. It's been a blast. I appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate you being on with me today, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. This is awesome.
Yep, a lot of fun. So, hey, everyone, you can head on over to iTunes and leave a raving review and a 5-star rating if you don't mind. We appreciate those. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Music, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you find your podcast. We are there. You can head on over to facebook.com/everydayamondaypodcast. My thanks again to Kevin Hurley for being on the podcast with us. Thanks for joining us in the trenches today, and we'll catch you on the next step of Every Day a Monday.